In this demonstration, we will go ahead and try to create a very first ASP.NET Core MVC web application. So for this, let me click on my Visual Studio 2019, and this demonstration will explain to you the process of creating a brand new project, and also we'll try to execute that code, and we'll try to understand the pre-written code as well in this section. So this is the first screen that you see when you open the Visual Studio 2019, and simply go ahead and try to click on Create a New Project. So we will be presented with different project templates that the .NET platform, the core platform, as well as the earlier .NET platform supports. Now, first of all, I'm going to filter the project templates based on my language, C#. And you can see here we have the ASP.NET Core web application. So using this project template, you will be able to create the different types of applications. It can be your MVC web applications, which is what this course is all about. We can also use this project template for creating the single page applications using the client UI technologies like Angular, React, and React plus Redux. And we can also create web APIs using these project templates, as well as the general Razor pages. So simply go ahead and try to click on Next again. And I'm going to put my entire course exercises files into a folder like MVC Core Exercises. And I'm going to call my first project as Introduction to ASP.NET Core MVC, and then simply click on Create. So now we have different options to create the project. The project templates is giving us an extra option wherein you can choose what type of project would you like to create. So first, you can notice here I'm choosing my .NET Core platform here, and we can also select the ASP.NET Core 5.0 or 3.1. So in November 2020, Microsoft has released the ASP.NET Core 5.0. So let me choose my latest one. Frankly speaking, more performance-wise related issues and stability issues have been addressed more in the ASP.NET Core 5.0. So unlike the 2.1 to 3.1, there were some changes, but most of the code that you see on 3.1 will work on the 5.0 as well. In any case, I'm going to select my latest version, ASP.NET Core 5.0. So here you have different project templates. An empty project template you can use if you want to start everything from scratch. This you can use to create a web API project. So in this code, I have dedicated two different sections to create the web APIs and consume the web APIs. At that time, we will see how to use this project template. And the ASP.NET Core Web App project template we used for creating the Razor pages. And this is the option that I'll be using throughout this course, as we are more interested in developing applications using the MVC design pattern. So where M stands for model, V for view, and C for controller. So, and then we have the other project templates for Angular, React, React with Redux. Perfect. And then on the right side, we have a couple of options like authentication. So currently, no authentication is the default option, but let me click on the change button. And here we have 4 different options. So for applications that doesn't require any user authentication, we will be happy to use this option. That means any guest user can come into your website and then go around. If we go for the individual user accounts, so select this option to create a project that includes a local user account store. That means we will be we will be designing the pages for the people to register at our site, and then we will be providing them login pages or change password pages. So we will store the user credentials into a custom database in SQL Server. So again, there is a special section I have dedicated to talk about the identity framework, which we will use to implement the forms authentication. And we can also choose the work or school accounts in case if you want your credentials to be validated against the Azure Active Directory or the Office 365. So anyway, I am not going to touch this authentication in this course. You can also go for the Windows authentication. So in case if you are trying to allow the people to get into your application using the Windows credentials, which will be validated against the Active Directory on your in-premises Windows server. So for this demonstration, probably I will use the Windows authentication. But most of my examples will be using the no authentication until I reach to the topic of identity framework. I'm using Windows authentication just to demonstrate to you how the pre-written code will help you to log into your site with your Windows credentials. So let's click on OK. And after that, by default, this on your local system, there will be a self-signed trust certificate for the HTTPS, which we can use it during the development time. Also, I'm not enabling the Docker support at this stage, and there is an option called as enable Razor runtime compilation. So what does that mean? Like when you develop your application and then when you run it from the Visual Studio, while you're going through the pages in the browser, if you come back to Visual Studio and make some changes in the web pages, those changes will be effective immediately if this option is enabled. So I prefer to keep this option as enabled because that is what is required for us most of the times. Of course, you can see the source templates is 5.0. That's perfect. So simply go ahead and try to click on Create. So now our very first brand new ASP Core MVC web application project is getting created based on the ASP.NET Core version 5. So as soon as the project got created, we can see there are plenty of folders. I'll explain in the next clip the significance of all of these folders. For the time being, because this is a very first project, I just want to simply run this application and see how does it works. So firstly, I'm going to go back to this option, and then when I expand this, you can test your applications with the help of the IIS Express, which is the development web server. We can also click on this introduction to ASP.NET Core MVC, which is your project name. So in this case, it will be using the Kestrel web server. Here it uses the IIS Express. So when I test it using my IIS Express for the very first time, so your application is going to get built and you will be redirected to the home page of this simple application. So you can notice here the port number is 44381, and then it is using HTTPS protocol on this localhost system. And you can notice here my Windows username is getting printed here, which is my computer name / my username. Because we are getting that option is because we enable the Windows authentication. Yes, if I currently didn't prompt me to enter the username and password, but you can do that by making some browser settings. We will concentrate more on that authentication part when we reach to that stage of implementing security for our web applications. So we're getting some links here. So first I can click on privacy. Then notice the URL got changed to home/privacy. So when you're learning ASP.NET Core MVC, the URLs are not file-based. Like you must have seen when we were working on ASP.NET, so we were having the pages like index.aspx. So those are file-based. But here, these are all now URL-based, right from the ASP.NET MVC to the ASP.NET Core MVC. This course obviously doesn't expect that you are familiar with the ASP.NET MVC, because this course teaches everything related to the ASP.NET Core MVC from scratch. So that's how these URLs are not anymore file based. They are basically URL based here, noun based you can say. So the URL contains many segments. So this one is nothing but your controller name. A controller is nothing but a class in ASP.NET Core MVC. And then controller / privacy is an action name. An action, technically you can call it as a method or a function. Frankly speaking, this URL in a layman terms, I can say class name / function name or class name / method name. So when I click on the home action, so it got redirected me to the home / index action. So I can type that by myself by saying home / index action or home / privacy action. Perfect. So by default, when we created this brand new project, Visual Studio has created a controller for us called as a home controller, and it has written two different actions like home and privacy. Now there are plenty of things that you can observe in this page. You can see there is a footer at the bottom of this page. Now, for example, when I'm in the home page, and then when I click on this privacy link, notice on the left bottom of the screen, home / privacy. So this is nothing but a hyperlink. So when I click on the privacy, it takes me to the privacy page. So we will see how this footer is coming up and how this header is coming up from here. So what is the code that was written in this pre-written boilerplate code that is fetching me my computer name / my username. And we also have this, for example, when I'm in the privacy, I have a link here. When I click on this link, it takes me to the root of my application, which is nothing but the home / index. So how these hyperlinks are working and what is the code behind that, we will see that in this section. And this welcome and then learn about building web apps with ASP.NET Core. So this message is coming to me from my child page. So basically behind this page there is a master page and there is a child page. Now when I click on the privacy, this is the content of the privacy page. This is the content of the index page. But these two pages are embedded into my master page, which we call it as layout page in ASP.NET Core MVC. So we will understand where is that master page or layout page, how the child page is getting embedded into this master page. All these things we will be learning pretty shortly in the next clips of this section. Okay, let's close the application and come back to Visual Studio. And the controller which I was talking is pretty much available to me in my controllers folder. So by default, you can see there is a controller called as homecontroller.cs. Now, your controller is nothing but a class name, as I said. But notice the name of this controller class name. It's like home followed by the word controller. Now, if you say that, okay, I won't give the name as controller, I just leave it as home, that's not a problem. Your program will still work. But when you're working on MVC, which is a design pattern, so we give preference to the conventions over configurations. So that is the main reason why people use a design pattern for coding, so that all the developers in the team will by default follow some naming conventions, and also they have to follow some conventions in storing the files in proper folders. You will understand all that pretty shortly. So one of the naming convention for naming the controller is your controller name followed by the keyword followed by the word controller. Now you can see here this class is inherited from a class called as controller. So that is your base class coming up from the Microsoft.ASP.NET Core.MVC. So that is the using statement that is already there for you. Now, inside this class, we have a couple of actions. Like I said, action is nothing but a method. Like we have an action called as index. We have another action called as privacy. And both of these functions were marked as public. And the return type of these actions is iActionResult. So notice here, iActionResult is the return type for all the actions here. Now, in the next section, I will explain to you what are the different return types that your controller's actions can have. At the end of the day, all those actions are derived from the iActionResult. So it is a kind of the base contract type here. So we will not change this return type from iActionResult to any other results that we have. You can consider this as a generic action result, unlike specifying the specific action result. Now, we don't have any code in the index action or the privacy action, but it is only having a return statement, return view. But when I hover on the view menu, view code, you can see it is returning view result object. So ideally, I should be having here view result instead of iActionResult. So when I specify view result, it means this action is definitely going to return only view result but nothing else. But if I keep it as iActionResult, that means depending on my logic in this code, I may return a view result sometime, or I may return a JSON result. So that is how we have the facility of returning different types from your controller's action if we specify the return type as iActionResult. Okay, perfect. Also, we have another action called as error. So I'll talk about that a bit later. But for the time being, I want to just focus more on the index action and then the privacy action. Now, when I say return view, that means it should take me to a view page. Now, notice here, we have a folder called as views, and there we have a folder called as home. So this folder name should be equivalent to your controller class name. That is important. So that is what conventions over configurations. So these are essential. So that's how the Razor View engine knows the location of the files. That's how it identifies the process. I mean, it searches for that file according to that naming convention. Now, when I expand my home folder, I see the view page as index.cshtml. Now, why the file name is index? Because the action name is index. We have privacy.cshtml, we have privacy action. So for every action, there is a corresponding view. So when I say return view, the control goes to the index page and then it executes that code. And when I say privacy, it executes the code what we have in the privacy.cshtml. Perfect. So when I open my index.cshtml, so this is that welcome screen code that we are seeing. When we ran this application, we saw this code. And also when I take you to my privacy, okay, we have this default information. So that is how we were having two sample actions and one sample controller so far when we created this brand new project. So now you know this welcome, learn about building web apps with ASP.NET Core is coming from this page, the index.cshtml. And similarly, when I go to the privacy, use this page to detail your site's privacy policy that can be seen when we go to the privacy page. So that is how we have a controller and then the action, literally class name / action name or function name. So this is just a brief explanation of this brand new project. Though we haven't written any line of code, we'll be doing that pretty shortly. Of course, I do see there is a constructor here for my controller, and this constructor is doing many things for us at this stage. So I will be focusing more on this iLogger a bit later for you. But right now, because we are here for the very first time, I just want to give you one line of explanation here. So iLogger is basically a service in your ASP.NET Core platform which allows you to log informations to your log providers using the log providers. Probably you can log on to the screen, or you can log on to your text files or the log files. So fortunately, this iLogger service functionality is already available to you. So we are injecting that service into our controller using this syntax. Now, who will give the service to me is the dependency injection container. We'll understand what is dependency injection a bit later. I'm just touching upon this area because we are seeing some code, so I don't want to leave this code. So I'm just trying to cover this explanation here. So this parameter we are simply storing into one of the property that we have as a class level property here. So probably, for example, in the index action, I can say logger dot log information, and then I just want to log some message. Okay, I'm going to say, hey, I'm from log service. So when we specify this kind of messages, and then when we run our application, so while the control gets into the index action, that message will be logged. But where can you see those logged messages? Yes, if I can take you to my output window, and we should be able to see that message that we have just logged, like, hey, I'm from the logger service here. This is just an information. So what does that mean? That means we don't have to really work hard for logging the messages, because Microsoft is already providing to you this iLogger service with which you can log the messages. And you will understand the concepts of dependency injection, all that stuff, as we move on to the different sections of this codes. In this demonstration, we'll now focus more on the anatomy of your ASP.NET Core MVC web application solution. So in the previous demonstration, we created this brand new project and we haven't written any code. We're still trying to understand the different folders that we are currently seeing here. So let me explain to you the significance of each of these folders one by one. First, let's concentrate on a folder called as dependencies. So when I expand my dependency packages here, you can notice here there's a package Microsoft.ASP.NET Core MVC.Razor Runtime Compilation. In fact, if you remember, when I was creating this solution, I selected Enable Razor Runtime Compilation to True. That means because I enabled that option, this NuGet package got downloaded and added as a dependency to this solution. And then when you expand these frameworks, this is where you will get to know the current version of the framework that you are using. So if I can take you to the properties window, you can see the version as 5.0 for your ASP.NET Core app. Perfect. So now you know what are these frameworks folders and then the packages folder. Now, currently we only have one NuGet package added to this solution. What if you want to have something else? Yes, you can right click on the dependencies, and then you can, okay, let me stop the execution of the solution once before I try to add some NuGet packages. So when I click on the Manage NuGet Packages, you have a couple of options like Browse, Install. Install tab will show you the packages that you already have added as dependencies to your solution. And if I can go to the Browse, that means you can search for the packages that you're looking for and add them as dependencies to your solution. Let's say, for example, just for the sake of demonstration, I just want to download the newtonsoft.json for passing your JSON. So I can say, I can choose the version that I'm interested in, and then I can simply click on Install here. So when I click on Install, what's happening here, it is trying to download that package from the NuGet Package Manager, and once it got downloaded, you can see the newtonsoft.json package has been added to the packages folder. Now, So that is how you can download the different dependencies that your application requires into the dependencies folder using the manage NuGet packages. Now, at any point of time, if you want to know like what are the different dependencies you have, one way is to expand the packages and then you can verify. The other thing is you can simply double click on your project name and then it opens the .csproj file for you. And that's where you can verify which ASP.NET Core framework you are currently using, which is the 5.0. And then you can see the package references here. The MVC Razor runtime compilation I can see as a dependency. I can also see my Newtonsoft.json here. So that is how in the dependencies folder you can see the list of packages as well as in the csproj file. So whenever you're adding a new package as dependency, so that will get added to that csproj file. Nice. In future, we will be working with plenty of packages like Entity Framework, or we will be using the Entity Framework related so many other packages. So all those packages we will be downloading here. Nice. The next folder is the properties folder, which just has got one file called as launchsettings.json file. Now here we have settings for the IIS. So if you are running your website with the IIS, so then these are the settings that will be applied. So you can see here currently it is saying Windows authentication is true and then anonymous authentication is false, and for the IIS Express the URL is this and then the SSL port it will use is this. So we can customize the values in this JSON file. Then you have two profiles here. So one for the IIS Express, one for the Kestrel web server. Now, so when you expand this drop-down list, you're seeing IIS Express and then you're seeing this introduction to ASP.NET Core MVC, that is nothing but this profile name. So these two profile names are getting displayed for you here. Now you can see the launch browser is true, and most important property here is the ASP.NET Core environment is currently development environment. So you can change that to production or you can change that to staging or test environment. And then this option, this profile we can use in case if you wish to test your application using the Kestrel web server. So let me do that by selecting this and then trying to run this, and you can notice it will be running on a different port called as 5001, which is being mentioned as the application URL here. And the page is working perfectly and everything looks good for me. So that is all about this launch settings.json file. At different stages of this course, I will be touching on this file and trying to change the environment to different other environments. Nice. Next, we have this webroot folder. So that's where we will be storing all our static client-side files like CSS files or the JavaScript files. And then in the lib folder, you can download the jQuery packages. The different JavaScript packages. For example, we have the Bootstrap already available to you. When we created this brand new project, we have jQuery, and we have this jQuery validation and validation unobtrusive, which we will use it for the client-side jQuery validations. We'll see all of them later when we reach to that topic. So ideally, if you're trying to download any client-side assets, and they have to be put under the webroot folder. Of course, we have seen the folders controllers already, so we will be storing all our controllers under this folders. Tomorrow I may create an employee controller or a products controller or a categories, countries like that. Then we have this models folder, so that's where the model for your controller will be defined in a separate folder called as models. Currently, there is only one default model we have, which is the error view model. So that's just having a couple of properties. we'll talk about this class when we reach to the error handling techniques. So this folder is purely meant for storing all our model classes. And then when I expand my views folder, I already told you your views should have a subfolder whose name has to be the controller name and followed by the different views. Each view each view will be pointing to one of the method in your controller. So these views are specific to this controller. But unlike, we have another folder called as shared. So what is the purpose of the shared folder under views means if you want to have certain views and you want to share those views across your application, then we better put those views under the shared folder. Most of the times you will see the shared folder, these views starts with the letter underscore. So that way we will be able to differentiate them, like there's some kind of partial views or there's some kind of shared views for you in this application. And then there is also an error.cshtml, so which is the default error page that gets displayed when you encounter any error in your application. So we can customize that error page as per our needs. So we will be focusing more on this code, what is being written in all these files in the next clip. But for the time being, I'm more interested in only introducing you to the significance of each of these folders. So there are some files like view imports, view start. You'll understand them in the next lecture. Then there is another important file called as appsettings.json. So this is where you define all your keys, key value pair, so that you can use those keys in your solution. So probably like your database connection strings, all of them can be stored inside the appsettings.json. So currently there are a couple of entries here related to the iLogger that we have seen in the home controller. So by default, the log level default is set to information. So that was the reason when I was trying to log some message using the log information method, I was able to see that message because the default level was set as information. There are different log levels, like 6 to 7 different log levels we have. So we'll be talking about the log levels in a different section in this course. Nice. So the bottom line here, appsettings.json is the place where you store your connection strings and any other keys of your choice like app settings. And then you have your program.cs, which is basically your entry point of your application. I will have completely a different clip to explain you the code in the program.cs as well as the code in the startup.cs file. So that I will keep it for the next 2 clips. But now in this lecture, we have understood the significance of each of the different folders that we have and the significance of the different files that we have. Now in the next lecture, I will now open all of these files individually and then try to go through that boilerplate code. In this demonstration, I will now explain to you the pre-written code that we already have when we created this brand new web application. So we have already understood the code in the controller, so I will rather focus more on the important views that we have in the shared folder. So the first file what we have here is your master page, so which we call it as layout pages. So let's try to understand the code what we have in the layout.cshtml. Now, first of all, you can see there is a title, and the title was hard-coded as Introduction to ASP.NET Core MVC, but there is something very special here, view data of title. Now, to show you what is the purpose of that view data of title, let me take you to my home controller. So you can see here we have this index action, we also have the privacy action, and we also have the error action. So we know that when we execute this action, it redirects me to the corresponding view. Like in the home folder, we have an index view. So when I take you to the index view, watch the very first line. It is telling me that view data of title equals to home page. So view data was pretty much like your view state in your earlier versions of ASP.NET. In the ASP.NET MVC also we have the view data. So ideally, view data is a place where you want to store some data and then you can access it in the corresponding view. So currently, the view data of title value is being set to something like, say, home page. So you should understand, index is a child page, privacy is a child page. Both these pages will be inserted or embedded into the layout page at runtime, because the layout is the master page and these are child pages. So in the child page, we have given the title as home page. So in the layout, what these guys are doing, whatever title that the child page has given, okay, we have given it as home page. So when I try to access my index page, it should tell me home page hyphen introduction to ASP.NET Core MVC. So rather than having the layout page title all the time, as we switch between the different child pages, the title also gets changed. So we know when we are browsing the site, we are in different page. Perfect. So if I can take you to the privacy, can I see the title is being set to privacy policy here? So what is this privacy policy will be shown here. Privacy policy followed by introduction to ASP.NET Core MVC. Let's quickly run this application with IIS Express to cover up that explanation. So the value for that view data is being given by the child pages. So can you see here, home page hyphen introduction to ASP.NET Core MVC. This home page is coming from the view data of title that we have given here. Similarly, when I switch to the privacy view, I can see privacy policy hyphen introduction to ASP.NET Core MVC. So that is the significance of this line. Next, we are more interested in connecting or linking our CSS files for this layout page. So we are having the bootstrap.min.css file from the CSS folder, dist folder, bootstrap, and lib. So where is this lib folder is existing? We can see that in the web root folder. So this web root we are identifying with this tilde sign. So inside lib, inside bootstrap, inside dist and CSS, we have this bootstrap.min.css file. So these files, you can see they are in the nested levels. In fact, file nesting, you can see there's an option, file nesting is enabled by default. So that's how you see the files in case if it is disabled. If I enable, so you will see only when you expand the files. Perfect. Then when we come to the body section, so I am more interested in covering the very first line. You can see there is a link called as Introduction to ASP.NET Core MVC. So this is a pretty much HTML anchor hyperlink tag here. So when I click on this link, where is it taking me? So it is taking me to the index action of the home controller. So we are using form tag helpers like the ASP action and then ASP hyphen controller, and we also have something like areas which I have covered in this course. So currently we are not using any areas in this solution, so that's why it is empty. So let's see what is that introduction to ASP.NET Core MVC. It's nothing but the main heading that we have in the navbar, this one. So when I try to click here, you can see on the left bottom, it takes me to the home controller's index action. For example, if I'm in the privacy right now, home/privacy, and now if I click here, it takes me to the home/index. So it was working because here the code was written home controller's index action. For example, if I change this to privacy here and then I save my page, and then when I go back to my web browser, and then when I refresh the page, and this time when I click here, I will be redirected to the privacy page instead of the home page. So currently you can see while the application was running, we made the changes, and by just refreshing, the changes have been taken into consideration. That was all because of the dependencies that we have, ASP.NET Core.MVC Razor runtime compilation package. Perfect. Next, we do have this home link and then the privacy links which we were seeing earlier. So again, you can see we have anchor tags here, ASP controller, home, ASP action to privacy, and the controller is home. So that's how we are seeing those two links on the main page. And on the extreme right side on the top of the screen, we were seeing the username. So we were grabbing the username by saying @user.identity.name. So because of that, we were able to see that username on the navigation bar. And this application is using the Windows authentication, so it is able to grab that name @user.identity.name. Nice. Now we are using the Razor syntax here, so that's why we are using that special @ sign. We will understand more on the code that we do in the Razor pretty shortly. Then the most important point is this area. Now we have a div using the Bootstrap class container, and there is a main tag here, and that's where @renderBody is happening. So what is @renderBody is nothing but rendering the content of the child page here. So when we run our application, it's the master page code which gets added to the child page code, and that will be shown as one page to you. Imagine if I don't put render body here, you don't see anything. So can I comment this by selecting this line and pressing Ctrl+KC to comment that? And then when I try to refresh my page, this time my layout page has got nothing to show. So it is telling me render body has not been called for this page. So that is how this line of code is responsible for displaying the code of the child page. So when we reach index, when we click on index, then the index page will get added here. When we click on privacy, then the privacy code will be added here. Nice. And then we have a footer of the page, and this footer also is having a hyperlink which takes me to the home controller's privacy action. We tested that. And finally, here they are importing all your JavaScript files. So here we have the script src tag to include your jQuery files, and then the bootstrap.min.js, and then the site.js, which is pretty much available to you in the webroot folder. So right now if I go to the site.js, there's nothing, but if you have certain things that you would like to use it across the application, that is the best place. And also we have this render section async scripts, and required is false, so it is again using the await task here. So because this is going to render the contents of the section asynchronously. So we will understand the purpose of the sections and scripts a bit later, but for the time being, you should understand that I can create my own sections in my child views, and then we can use those sections, or we can render those sections from the layout page. Now it is always recommended to add all your JS files as references at the end of the page rather than having them in the header section. So that is how we now have understood the code in the layout page. Now let's concentrate a bit on the other files that we have under the layout. We can see this view imports.cs.html and then the view start. They are completely right under the views folder. So first of all, let me show you what is there in the view imports.cs.html. So this page is already having 3 lines of code. The first one is @using introduction to ASP.NET Core MVC. That means you have the using directive statement so that you can access the different components of your solution inside the Razor page. I'm also trying to access my models folder, which is just having the error view model so far, but in future we will add more models here, and you can access those models across all the views of your solution if you add them in the view imports.syshtml. So what does that mean? For example, if I add these two things here, so it means I don't have to really add these two things in each of my child pages. My child pages have now access to these two namespaces. And there's one interesting line here called as the @tag helper. It's a wildcard character, means all tag helpers, built-in tag helpers I should say, are available to you because they're all coming from the Microsoft.ASP.NET-Core.MVC.tag helpers namespace. So as a matter of fact, you have noticed in the layout view, we were using ASP area, ASP controller, ASP action. These are all the tag helpers. Now, what if I go to the imports.syshtml and then I comment this line, and then I save my solution, and then let me test this application one more time. So let's see how does those form tag helpers will work for you. So interestingly, you can see here that the home link, the privacy link here, the privacy link here, they're all not working because you have suppressed the support for the tag helpers, inbuilt tag helpers in your solution. Now what if I go back here, press Ctrl+KU to uncomment it, save it, come back and then refresh. So this time the links should be working as earlier. So no problem. So we are able to switch between the views using these links here. So that is the significance of adding the support for all the inbuilt tag helpers. In this course, we will see how we can create our own custom tag helpers and how we will refer them in the view imports.syshtml. Now, nice. So next we have the most important file is the viewstart.syshtml. So this file has got just one line of code and it is mentioning what is the layout page that the views of the solution have to use. So I'm saying layout equals to underscore layout. So that means, so this is the file that we are trying to refer. So this is a default layout page that we have. What if you create a custom layout, something like say abc.syshtml or a custom layout.syshtml, then I should come here and change that name to custom layout here. Now, for example, if I comment this line, means we are not basically using any layout support for your solution. Okay, let me go back now and then try to refresh this page and see how things are looking. So now if I say home/index, there's no bootstrap support, nothing. So when we have commented this line, so that means you have totally excluded this file from the execution pipeline. So you have disconnected the layout page from the flow of the application. So you are literally running each action by yourself and without a layout page. So there is no navbar for you, there's no hello username, there's no footer, there's no header. So all these things are not happening because we're not using the layout page at all. So when we disconnected the support of the layout, it means you're just running your child page directly without taking the help of the master page. Okay, let me uncomment this line. And this time when I go back and I refresh, everything is normal. So that is the significance of the viewstart.syshtml. Now, what is really very important when we run your application, obviously the layout will be the child pages will be embedded into the layout page, but will the layout page will be in the picture or not is decided in the view start. So this is obviously the starting point for deciding the view what needs to be rendered. So now you know what is layout, what is view imports, what is view start, and everything. There is also another file called as underscore validation scripts partial. We do have a concept called as partial views, means child views. You can have one main view with so many child views. Currently, this view was only referring to jQuery.validate.min.js and then the unobtrusive min.js files. So in the webroot folder, you can notice under jQuery validation, we have this jQuery validate.js and then the jQuery validate.unobtrusive. So these two files were taken into references in this file. So they are basically meant for the client-side validations. So the advantage of taking these two files separately in a different file rather than taking them in the layout page by this default project template, the reason is not every view may require this support for these files. So then if that's the case, why do we have to take these files into references for all the child pages? So whichever child page has to have support for these two files, they can render this partial view, they can refer to this partial view in their child view. So that is the reason why the inclusion of these two JavaScript files was taken in a different file. We will understand what are partial views, how to render partial views, all those things a bit later. So finally, we have this error.cshtml, so which is the default error page for your solution. So currently, if I have to show you how do I get redirected to this error page, means I need to generate some error. Okay, let me do that. Let me take you to my home controller, and let's say I have a couple of variables here, and then I'm saying a value is 10, b equals to 0, c equals to a by b. So that means this will generate me an error because we're trying to divide 10 by 0. Now interestingly, when I run this application and then it goes to the home controller's index action, so that's where it's going to generate an error for me saying attempted to divide by 0. Of course, I got this error in Visual Studio but not from the error page. So let me do that by saying start without debugging. So this time it should take me to the error page here. Now where is this error page coming from? I'll explain to you a bit later. So you can see attempted to divide by 0 and all the messages here. So how are we getting redirected to this error page, but not to the error page that I was more interested in? So that is because, just for this one line explanation, I'll tell you in the startup.cs file, I haven't touched this file yet, but I'll be doing that in depth pretty shortly. There is a method called as configure in this class where I have this condition if the environment that I'm currently on is development environment. So I'm saying use the developer exception page. So that is why it was showing me the developer exception page. For production, we will be using our home controller's error action. So how do I change my environment from development to production? Let's go to the launch settings.json file and change this development to production. This time I'm going to test my application one more time. So obviously this time it shouldn't be using the developer exception page. Instead, it should use my home controller's error page. Can you see now? We are in the error page that we are interested in. So if I can show you the code in the error page, I can see an error occurred while processing your request, and then your request ID is so and so. So now, for example, if I change my default something, I'm just trying to make some changes to this error page, and then if I refresh, you should be able to figure out that you are definitely in the error.cshtml. So we'll focus more on all these topics in depth a bit later, but for the time being, my initial intention is to explain to you the significance of all this boilerplate code. So this is the error page that we have in the shared folder. So whenever you get any error anywhere in your application, you will be automatically redirected to this error page. And this error page is showing me some request ID, but where is that request ID is coming up is because if you see in the home controller, there is an error action here. So this error action is returning a view by creating an object of the error view model. So where do we have the error view model? That we have in the models folder, and that is having the request ID as a property. So we are assigning the request ID values by referring to the system.diagnostic, some random ID which the platform is giving, and that error view model object is going to this error page, what we have just seen here. Of course, whatever I was passing from there, I was receiving by saying at model of error view model. So at this point of time, if these things doesn't make any sense to you, you don't have to worry, because we will be talking about all these things in depth. So with that, we have covered all the files. So we have also looked at the app settings.json file. So in fact, we will be putting all of connection strings and keys, everything in this file, and we will access those values in the code with the help of the configuration service. Now we are left with two important files, program.cs and then the startup.cs, which we will be talking about in the next two lectures.